Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for a Metal Monday album review. Today it's going to be Darkthrone Old Star, which came out a couple of weeks ago. So let me give you the skinny on this particular album. I think fans of Darkthrone are going to like it. I happen to be a fan of Darkthrone, and I rather like it. One of the things I love about Darkthrone is that each time they come out with an album, you never quite know what you're going to get, and that has been the case for I think like 20 years now. The guys in Darkthrone, Ted and Fenriz, they tend to just do whatever they want to do. And so the end result is both something unexpected and usually something that I end up really liking simply because I think it's a very true artistic expression of where they're at. It really represents exactly what they want to do and exactly what they think is good rather than having to fulfill some prior expectations with a previous album. They really just tend to do whatever they want, and I like the result of that. And indeed, I like the result of Old Star. A couple of things about this album. First of all, the vinyl version is superior. I've listened to the digital version and the vinyl version. Something about Darkthrone on vinyl is the kind of stripped down production methods that they use tend to be warm and full on a vinyl sound in a vinyl system, whereas on a digital soundscape, they tend to sound a little bit thinner. However, I think the digital version of this album is superior to the digital versions of past albums. So if you're comparing Old Star to the digital version of both Arctic Thunder or Underground Resistance or even Circle the Wagons, this one is superior. So if you're getting the CD or you're just listening to it on a streaming site, I think the production will please you more than it has perhaps in the past. Nevertheless, I actually really like the production on this album. In fact, that's the first of my big categories that I'll talk about. The production, even though if you were to listen to it, it thoroughly sounds anti-modern, but it's actually quite full. You can hear all of the instruments really well. The drums sound big and full. They don't sound kind of thin or lo-fi, which is what you tend to get when you're doing or you're listening to older analog recordings, particularly from the 80s. The main thing that I think that's improved really since 1990 is the sound of drums on albums, even though we've had this decline in quality that's come with the Loudness Wars. This still sounds louder than Loudness Wars productions, even though it's not a Loudness War production. So one of the things that I'd like to point out for the production of this album, as well as Arctic Thunder in particular, is stepping away from this idea that you have to overcompress everything to make it sound loud. Those two albums sound bigger and beefier. The guitar sound is louder and more aggressive and fuller than any of the compressed stuff that you'll hear around it. So that's something that people really ought to take into account when they're producing metal records, is over maximizing the volume tends to strip the thickness of the guitar sound. And I love the guitar tone on this. I think Ted's guitar tone sounds great on this album, actually superior to Arctic Thunder, and I loved the tone on Arctic Thunder as well. The vocals are maybe slightly buried, but that goes with the aesthetic. So there's this odd contrast between a really thick and almost dry guitar sound compared to a very wet and reverbery vocal sound that's a little bit buried in the mix, but I think aesthetically it works together, and so I actually liked the way that the vocals ended up being mixed, and the drums are more in the front of the sound on this album than in the past, and I enjoyed that as well, especially on vinyl. The drums sound really good on the vinyl version of Old Star. My version is the green vinyl, which is a heavyweight vinyl. I don't know about the it's a nice dark forest green, which I like. I don't know about the black vinyl, if it's as heavy. But the heavyweight vinyl, it feels like a good product. It feels like it's really going to last a long time. Even though it's simple packaging, a sleeve and a little, basic paper sleeve with a simple liner that's plastic to kind of keep everything there. And just the lyrics on the back, some very basic production notes on the front. This is probably the most stripped down packaging I've seen from Darkthrone in quite some time. But nevertheless, it feels like it's quality. Like I can put this on in 10 years and it's going to sound pretty good. It's not going to diminish in quality, as sometimes you get thinner vinyls. They feel like they wear out a little bit sooner. I don't know if that's actually the case, but my thinner vinyls from the past, like from the 80s and 70s, those tend to have just a little bit more scratchiness than the heavyweight vinyls that I have. Keep in mind, my heavyweight vinyls tend to be classical music, so maybe they're just played less. I don't know. But anyway, I really appreciate the production. So I'm going to give the production, in the context and with the aesthetic that's there, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's actually very, very effective for what's there. I perhaps wanted a little bit more of the vocals, and that would probably be my only complaint, but I think the aesthetic for the vocals works. Next, I want to talk about the composition elements of the album. There's 6 tracks on it, 3 on side A, 3 on side B, with such great titles as The Hardship of the Scots, which should let you know where the band is and where they've been for the last few albums. The 6 tracks are good. You don't really need a huge number of songs if the 6 songs on it are good. My complaint actually with the total composition of the album is that it actually feels a little bit short. I've had 6-song Darkthrone albums in the past, and I haven't really felt like I was left wanting, but this one left me wanting a little bit. And I think compared to, say, the Underground Resistance, you have songs that don't feel quite as epic and quite as varied as the ones from that album. So the 6 songs on Underground Resistance are so spread out from each other and are so different and are so original to hear, even though they're always hearkening back to this traditional heavy metal sound, and indeed Old Star has a lot of traditional heavy metal sounds. Even though those ones didn't feel like 6 songs, this one feels like 6 songs. It feels a little bit short. The style overall of the compositions for Old Star is in that traditional heavy metal style. However, it's also mixed with, say, early black metal sounds, like things from like Venom, maybe Merciful Fate. I think the vocals on this album, when I talk about performance, I'll address this again, but the vocals are very reminiscent of King Diamond's vocals from the early 80s, but without the higher falsetto parts. So a more black metal King Diamond, if you want to believe it that way. Maybe King Diamond transported to a later version of black metal. A lot of the riffs on here are very reminiscent of early black metal. However, you have a lot of this traditional heavy metal sound as well, so it's a great blend of the two. If you liked Arctic Thunder, chances are you'll like the compositions on this one. I think it actually sounds a little bit closer to Circle the Wagons than it does to Arctic Thunder, but you never know what direction these guys are going to go in. You can never quite tell what they're going to do. They always do something new and original, and this is no exception. I think, like with any Darkthrone record, some are going to be people's favorites and some are not going to be people's favorites. Some people, this is really going to be perfect. I thought Arctic Thunder was just perfect for when it came out. But it's just, this one is not quite as there for me as the compositions go. On occasion, the riffs, which a lot of the riffs are very memorable, they stick on them just a little bit too long. You hear the same guitar riff play for a little bit too long, so the songs, some of the longer songs, feel longer, which is not what you want. Yet at the same time, there's also huge variety in all of the songs. The big section changes to where you hear a texture and a tempo that's completely unexpected. It doesn't feel like a click track album, which I also appreciate. It feels more organic, and I really like that. So compositions overall, I guess I give them about a 7.5 out of 10. It's not my favorite Darkthrone record as far as the songs that are on it, but there are some really good ones. I do like Hardship of the Scots quite a bit. I really do like Old Star. Oddly, the last track, The Key is Inside the Wall, is probably my least favorite track. But I think whenever you do an album, the final song that you put on it, you can do whatever you want. It's your chance to really take as many risks as you want. It's not Leave No Cross Unturned, which was just such a killer final track. So 7.5 out of 10 for that. For the performance aspect, I'm actually going to give the performance an 8 out of 10. So the vocal performance is a little bit limited, and that would probably be my big complaint. It's a little bit buried in the mix, which I think, as I said, aesthetically works, but it's very, very focused on Ted's version of modern black metal vocals. And so as a result, it's a little bit less variety than what we've gotten even on like Arctic Thunder. And it feels a little more introverted, which is fine. So the vocals do work for the album. I just wish there was a little bit more to them on this particular album. Guitars sound great. So Ted sounds great playing the guitars. The riffs are performed well. The tone sounds great. Likewise, the drumming performance is also excellent. Everything fits together very well. The way that they construct their songs with, each song is composed separately from the others. So Ted would write his own song, and Fenriz would write his own song, and then they put them together on the album. Because that should produce something disjointed, you end up with a lot of variety. But on this one, it feels a little bit together. Everything feels like it fits a little bit more together into one cohesive whole, if you catch my meaning. So all the strings and the drums do fit very well together. All the performances are good. Not a lot in the way of lead guitar, but you shouldn't expect that from Darkthrone anyway. The lead guitars that are there are more melodic rather than trying to play something impressive or exciting, and so that works for them. So overall, 8 out of 10 on the performance for this aesthetic. Obviously, if you don't like Darkthrone, you're not going to like Ted's vocals. That's probably going to go in there. But even if you are not a fan of older Darkthrone, I think the performances on this are pretty ear-catching. You might end up liking newer Darkthrone with their use of traditional heavy metal sounds. Last thing I like to talk about is general effect, which is how the whole thing fits together. And for me, it's like a 7 out of 10. It's a good album. So maybe 7.5 out of 10. We'll go 7.5 because I do like it. I really like to listen to it the last few weeks as I'm lifting weights. I think it has a good kind of constant motion and a very aggressive sound to it that I enjoy. But it doesn't leave me feeling as invigorated as some of the last few Darkthrone albums, particularly Arctic Thunder and Underground Resistance, but also Circle the Wagons, which I like a lot. So if you like newer Darkthrone, chances are you're going to like Old Star. It does sound best on vinyl. And I think one of the things that I might expect from this album in the future is that I'll be in a different mood that will make me like the album more than I like it today. So that happens sometimes. Like Arctic Thunder, I was in a big mood to listen to Arctic Thunder, and then I just didn't listen to it for a long time because I just wasn't in the mood for whatever kind of introverted presentation they were doing with that. And likewise with this one, I might get into a different mood this winter where I really want to listen to more of this kind of traditional heavy metal mixed with black metal, and I'll probably continue listening to it. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you will let me know what you think of Old Star in the comments down below. I think it's good. I think if you're a fan of Darkthrone, you're probably going to like it, but obviously it may not be your favorite because you can't, after like 20 albums, it's really hard to come out with one that every single one is everybody's favorite. So thanks so much. You can find me at dbspress.com, davidvstewart.com. Check out my music at zolonline.com. Buy my books if you want to support the channel. That's a great way to help out. And I'll see you guys next time.